Okay, well, it is 6:03, so I think now might be a apt time to start. So welcome everyone to this Samuel Proctor Oral History Program event. We're doing this with the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars to showcase SPOHP's work in researching the history of equity in higher education, and that of course ties in strongly with what they do at the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars. So my name is James. I'm an intern with SPOHP, as we call the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program here. Just a little bit of briefing on what the internship is. As interns, we look at oral history in kind of an academic and a theoretical study at times, but a big part of the program is to make sure we're doing field work and we're engaging with people. That means we're conducting interviews, we're transcribing interviews, we're auditing other people's interviews. So we've really gotten to see throughout this semester a lot of people's different experiences that tie into the whole program that is MFOS. Setting the whole thing up, getting funding secured, talking to politicians, and then of course talking to MFOS alumni and current students. So as interns, we come from a very diverse range of academic backgrounds. Not everyone here is from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I know there's people from family, youth, and community sciences, and even the business college, but this experience is a great experiential learning opportunity where we can not only do some academic research, but we get great fulfillment in community engagement. MFOS is a pretty integral part of our campus at this point. And so engaging with this material is really engaging with the culture and society that's around us. So, like I said, this research is that we've been doing is basically on the first generation college student experience in higher education and maybe how that's changed over the years. The Machen Florida Opportunity Scholarship provides funding as well as support in various ways to first generation college students, very academically talented first generation college students, to help them succeed and get them, help them combat some of the challenges that they're facing because they are first generation college students. So we'll be having the current director, Dr. Leslie Pendleton. She'll be speaking with us later on. But for now, I believe Dr. Ortiz can tell us a little bit more about the research, and then we'll hear some words from former UF President Bernie Machen.
All right, James, thank you so much. And I'm really privileged and honored to be here. As James mentioned, my name is Paul Ortiz. I have the great honor of being the director of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program and a professor of history here at UF. I wish I could take credit for the idea of doing an internship, an oral history internship, keyed on the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program, but that honor goes to my dear colleague, Dr. Leslie Pendleton, who you'll be hearing from a bit later, but also you'll be hearing about during the course of the evening. She's the current director of the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program. I'm so thrilled that we've been able to work with Dr. Pendleton and her incredible staff at Opportunity Scholars. This project is near and dear to my heart. Talking to Bernie a bit earlier tonight, as many of you know, the oral history program founded by Dr. Samuel Proctor has literally done hundreds of different oral history projects. We're actually closing in on having almost 10,000 oral histories conducted since 1967. But I can say candidly that none more important than the interviews that we've been doing with MFOS founders, students, and alumni. This is really important to me because I'm also a first generation college student. And when I was growing up in my gritty shipyard town of Bremerton, Washington, college wasn't really something people talked a lot about. They basically talked about surviving, surviving the shipyard, surviving wars. I'm a third generation military veteran. But coming back to being able to go to college as a first gen student, I was really blessed because I was able to go to an incredible community college, Olympic Community College, where I've had the great honor to be a speaker on several occasions. One funny story to relate there, the president of that college, who's become a really dear friend, recently introduced me in a lecture I gave last month. He said, you know, Dr. Ortiz may be the first academic in higher education who didn't find out he had an Associate of Arts degree until after he got his PhD. Because when I went to transfer from Olympic College, I was too busy to go through the graduation ceremony. So when I was called back years later, after I became a PhD in history, I said kind of sheepishly to Olympic College, I said, well, you know, I don't even know if I have I don't know if I got my Associate of Arts degree yet. And they said, oh, no, you did. We just want to make sure you know that. But be that as it may, just a few more words before I turn it back to our students and I get to introduce my dear friend and neighbor, Bernie Machen. This project, or these stories that you're going to hear tonight, are the culmination of a whole semester's worth of work. And you'll hear about the interviews. And the students were also very lucky because we had an incredible group of guest speakers coming in. Dr. Pendleton really helped us bring in individuals to talk with us about these big themes: equity in higher education. How do we achieve it in this day and age when equity is on the tip of everyone's tongue, but it's easier said than done, right? It's one thing to have an idea that everyone should have equal access in the United States to higher education, but that's just an idea. How do you implement that? And so our students debated, discussed, argued all throughout the semester. We read a lot of the scholarly literature and debates about the issue of equity in higher ed. We heard from some outstanding guest speakers from both the UF, but also other campuses, talk to us about how we can fine tune these ideas about equity. We were animated all throughout, and I think the students will highlight this tonight. We were animated by the idea that when the semester ends, this is not the end of this collaboration. The end goal, the end product, or one of the end products, I should say, is going to be a documentary, a video documentary on Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars that's going to premiere on National First Generation College Student Day, which I believe, Adolfo, is November 8th, if I'm not mistaken. And that is something we're really looking forward to. We're going to go into production over the summer. And many of the students who you see here this evening have already pledged to stay with us over the summer to help us really produce that documentary and make it into a top quality product so we can share the UF story about how we're grappling and succeeding with this issue of providing as a welcoming place for first generation students. And Bernie, you'll be glad to know that we received a promise from none other than Governor Jeb Bush, who we interviewed early in the semester. Governor Bush, and Adolfo was there, and we got him, he was recorded. Governor Bush told us that when we finish this documentary, he pledges to put that documentary in the hands of every governor in the state, in the United States. And so that's going to help us spread the word even further about this remarkable program we call the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program. So without further delay, I want to introduce my dear colleague, friend, guide, and also neighbor, UF President Emeritus Bernie Machen, who really was the subject of a lot of discussion. He was interviewed for this program, obviously, and basically we talked about you, Bernie. We gossiped about you almost every week in the class. And so we're just so thrilled to see you here today. So if you wanted to share some of your thoughts with us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It is no exaggeration to say he's my neighbor and my good friend, and we share a lot of interests together. But one of the things I want to emphasize tonight is that, and I think this collaboration between the Proctor program and MFOS is going to show this better than anyone or any other way we could show it, is that this is a special program because of the special people that we attract to the program. Both the students who are in it and the staff, who are absolutely unmatched in the United States, in my opinion, make this program a truly special output for higher education and for the University of Florida, and in fact, for the rest of the country. So I don't want to spend too much of my time. I want to hear from the students who did the research on first gen, so that we can make sure that we document through the Proctor methodology how MFOS is part of the University of Florida, but it's also part of the future of higher education. So I can't tell you how gratified I am to be associated with the Samuel Proctor program. He lived literally within 2 blocks of where Paul and I now live. So it's maybe a neighborhood thing that's going on here, Paul, but we're happy about it, and we want to see it blossom in the future.
Thank you for those words. Very nice. So as part of this internship, as Dr. Ortiz was saying, we're really engaging with this material on many different levels. And one of the tasks that we have at the end of the internship is to figure out all these different, take all these different experiences that we have had throughout the internship, right? Because this is not just collecting data. I mean, these are real social interactions and experiences that we can take with us and really gain something from. And so we had to think as interns, how can we showcase these findings and do something positive with them? And we found two main ways to do that. One is with a documentary, which a short documentary. So not the one Dr. Ortiz was talking about in November, but one that we'll actually have you watch today. And that showcases a lot of the experiences and feelings that current students, feel towards the program. And then the other way that we decided to showcase our findings was through a timeline, and a historical timeline that tracks integration at UF and access to higher education. I think it goes without saying that the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars program is a very integral cornerstone of that journey. And so you can see here, this is our pamphlet. It's actually 6 pages in total, but it's a typical pamphlet, that folds in thirds. So this is the first 4. We just couldn't fit it all on one slide. And then you can see the back right here. And we'll go through each piece and really dissect things and, talk about our experiences in creating this along the way. So Abigail is going to take us through the first page.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abigail Jones, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the University of Florida, specifically focusing on key events as they relate to higher education access and educational inequity. So beginning in 1853, the University of Florida was founded, and in 1906, UF became a land-grant university, which made them the flagship university of the state. This was also when East Florida Seminary and the Florida Agricultural College were moved to become a part of the University of Florida. Then in 1944, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, also known as the GI Bill, was introduced. So the GI Bill greatly increased the educational opportunities for veterans to obtain a higher education degree, and also greatly increased the student body at UF. Following that, in 1947, women were allowed to enroll for the first time at UF, which had previously been the all-male university in Florida, while FSU was the all-female university. So now both universities were co-ed. And while UF was now admitting women, they were still a segregated all-white university. This was until the admission of George Stark Jr. He was admitted to the UF College of Law in 1958, and he became the first Black student at UF. Although Mr. Stark never graduated due to the death threats and violence he faced while as a student, he did receive an honorary degree from the Levin College of Law during the 2019 commencement ceremony. Following that, and about 8 years after the Brown versus Board decision, UF began integrating its undergraduate student body in 1962, and this was when they admitted 7 Black students. Following that, in 1971, the Institute of Black Culture was created after student protests were held. And these protests were held because UF failed to provide programs and initiatives that would help improve the campus climate for Black students. And this past week was the 50th anniversary of these protests, which were also called Black Thursday. Following that, in 1990, the American Hispanic Alumni Association was founded. And this association is important because it's kind of known as the precursor to MFOS, and it provides programs for Hispanic students and alumni. And finally, in 1994, La Casita was created, also known as the Institute of Hispanic Latino Cultures. And La Casita provides itself in being a home away from home and serves as UF's commitment to Hispanic and Latino students. So now I'll pass it on over to Avery.
So hi everyone, I am Avery Goodman, and kind of going on what Abby said, or Abigail, you can't really talk about equity in higher education without talking about the controversy over affirmative action, especially in like the late 1990s, early 2000s. 1999, affirmative action was banned in the state of Florida. And thus, race-based affirmative action programs were cut. And a lot of students really suffered under that, especially those who were looking towards access in higher education. Flash forward to 2003, it became kind of a national controversy with a Supreme Court case, Grunter versus Bollinger, hope I pronounced that right, that allowed race to be a factor in admission, but not admissions to hold quotas. And here in the photo that you can see in the pamphlet, President Bush also weighed his opinion on equity in higher education. So a year later, President Bernie Machen becomes the 11th president of the University of Florida, and obviously is very instrumental in the creation of Machen Florida Opportunity Scholarship. And so with that being said, in 2005, there was a beginning discussion about a first generation scholarship with Dr. Tejas Irwin. And it was not really like a quota-based scholarship, but rather a merit-based scholarship for first-generation students to kind of solve that problem of equity in higher education. A year after that, Florida Opportunity Scholarship was born with a $2 million grant, and was given the support of Jeb Bush. We have a link to his interview later in this pamphlet. I would highly recommend watching it. And then in 2009, Dr. Leslie Pendleton becomes the FOS director and has continued to do incredible work for this program ever since. I'm sure if you're a former student here, she has touched your life in more ways than you could probably think. And then in 2010, FOS got its first graduates, kind of solidifying the power that this program has held for many students, and especially these first FOS graduates.
All right, so I'm back for this third page. This is like the last page of the timeline portion of the pamphlet. And so if the first page is kind of broad historical context, and then the second page is setting up the Florida Opportunity Scholars program, this page is really about becoming, getting the name, the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars, and kind of where MFOS stands today and where they're looking towards the future. So yes, they were called the Florida Opportunity Scholars at first, but it was in 2012 that it became the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholarship after a very generous, anonymous $10 million donation that was made in honor of UF President Emeritus Bernie Machen. And then in 2016, that was the 10-year anniversary of MFOS. About 4,000 students had been helped by that program since its inception. And yeah, so again, we have QR codes kind of scattered around this brochure. And those are so that, if someone's holding this brochure, they can go and get extra information about any of these little pieces. So we figured that'd be a great way to integrate technology and to really expand access just to the history of equity in higher education. In 2020, MFOS reaches 5,000 scholars, a huge accomplishment. And the UF AHA established an MFOS endowment to continue to support the program, and especially kids coming from high schools in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. And then in 2021 here, it's a little bit cut off, but just bear with me, 15 years of MFOS. Pretty incredible that, 2006 was 15 years ago, right? But you can see there's a QR code here, and that will link you to the video that we're going to watch later. And then looking forward, Dr. Pendleton has the goal of reaching 1,600 scholars at any time. That should happen very soon. And one of our primary goals with doing this in the form of a brochure, because we could have done a timeline in many different ways, but this is something we really had to think about, is first kind of gather the information of, well, what do we want to include? And we quickly realized that a timeline is, something that is going to continue to evolve over time. So we used a program called Canva that it facilitates collaboration on a project like this very well. And we left some room here so that the timeline could be easily extended. We have notable interviews in this place right now, but we have a whole other page of notable interviews that they could slide down to. And this could actually be extended as there's more notable achievements from MFOS, or from improvements in access to higher education at UF, because that should certainly happen in the next couple years. But to talk about some of those interviews, we have Christina.
So hi everyone, I'm going to be presenting the last page of the pamphlet, which has all of our interviews on it. It features an overview of not just our own interviews, but some of the ones that SPOHP faculty has conducted over the last 2 semesters with students, alumni, faculty, staff, administration, and even Jeb Bush has been mentioned before, to document the histories of those involved with the MFOS program. Most of these interviews have taken place over Zoom due to the pandemic, but this does not mean that these interviews are any less valuable or telling to us about the program itself. We decided to format it this way, and James spoke a little bit about it, because we were creating the timeline and we realized that we had not really included the interviews that we had conducted over the semester. So to bring attention to all of our great narrators, we dedicated this last page to them. As you can see, we have their names, some short information about them, as well as the QR code that you can scan on your phone to access either the YouTube video or the audio MP3 file for the interview. I also wanted to mention some of the things that we learned over the semester, not just me, but other interns, just from conducting the interviews. One, and arguably the most important thing we learned, is what the MFOS program meant to all of those involved. For the students and alumni, the program was something that facilitated their journey in higher education through the removal of a financial burden and the addition of a support system. Many of our narrators spoke about how the MFOS program took a weight off of their shoulders and allowed them to fully explore the college campus without worrying about getting a job or anything of the like. Although some of these incoming students maybe had not heard about the MFOS program when they received their letters of acceptance to it, they certainly understood the value of it as time progressed and long into their postgraduate careers. Additionally, many of the faculty and staff in the program revealed to us the importance of MFOS in supporting the first-gen experience in higher education as part of the general effort to make UF an environment where all people are welcome. Secondly, many of us learned about just the stories and experiences of the students who sit in the very same classes and Zoom calls as us. Some of the interns mentioned that these interviews served as moments of checking their own privilege and were able to reflect on the differences of their own college experience to other students. As a third-generation student myself, I realized the importance of recognizing that those of us with the benefit of having family members who went to college should listen to and help document the stories of those who are not in the same circumstances. Although not having access to the same resources is a notable aspect of the first-gen identity, this does not mean in any way that these students are any less smart, capable, or hardworking. In fact, what has been detailed in these interviews that we've conducted and the transcriptions that we've done is that MFOS and first-gen students are one of the hardest working groups on campus, as demonstrated through their academics, participation in clubs, and the holding of many, many different leadership positions. The last thing I wanted to mention before I hand it over to Katie to talk a little bit more is about what I personally experienced from conducting the interviews. Other than just genuinely enjoying the conversations that I was having with my narrators, I realized the diversity of experiences that MFOS students bring to the table. My narrator, Vidi Lopez Lugo, shared with me her valuable experiences within the MFOS program as an MFOS ambassador, while also having experiences outside of the program, like being a preview staffer. She spoke to me about having been in the MFOS program convinced her to pursue higher education as part of her career. In comparison, my second narrator, Stephen Valdivia, spoke to me about his fascinating postgraduate career hopping from different multimedia jobs until he got where he is today working with LinkedIn. In general, I guess my point is just the MFOS program and the first-gen experience is not universal, but a program where the paths of many people cross together while they each look to their own future. And before I keep ranting, I'm going to pass it on to Katie to talk about her own personal experience too.
Hi, everyone. I would just like to go off of what Christina just said and talk about my own experiences while participating in this internship. If I could summarize what I learned in one word, it would be the word different. I say that because every interview I conducted or even just heard about in the class were all wildly different from one another. Even though we are all admitted to this school on the same criteria, no two individual experiences will be identical. For example, my first interview was with Courtney McGillicuddy, who's a good friend of mine. Growing up, college was talked about in her household, and it was always assumed that she would go to UF. She was from Williston, so the university was a constant presence for her. Her hometown is less than an hour away from Gainesville, meaning that she had a system of support when college life became difficult. Her experience with MFOS was mostly through the first 2 years of her degree, but she said that she learned a lot from just being in the program and using its resources. In contrast, Dr. Sky George, my second narrator, was originally from Haiti and moved to Miami when he was very young. He actually had to take a Greyhound bus, from Miami to Gainesville to move into the dorm on his first day. He ended up being the first ever graduate assistant for MFOS and credits part of his success in academia from the support he received from the program. While both individuals were first generation, they could not have had experiences that varied more. Listening to my narrators was a valuable experience as it exposed me to situations that I myself had never been in. Similar to Christina, I am a third generation student. College was always a given and I had the resources to get here, for which I am extremely grateful. However, such an experience blinded me to what my peers were struggling with. I am honored to have heard the triumphs and tribulations of my peers in such a personal manner. Oral history in general helps create a snapshot of time, a tangible piece of history that can be saved and explored for years to come. This statement is particularly true for the MFOS program. Listening to these testimonies is critical to improving the lives of first-generation students that select Gainesville as their home for 4 years. It allows those in charge to hone and adjust the program to fit the needs of each generation of Gators. These interviews also showcase the value of MFOS, which help further support the program.
I was just gonna continue the conversation about my personal experience with oral history and the MFOS program. To be honest, the concept of oral history was entirely foreign to me before I became involved with this internship. I was a business student who's always loved history, and I'm passionate about people, so it ended up working out really well for me. I had never heard of the MFOS program, although I am a second-year student at UF. And throughout this process, I've actually learned of some of my close friends and classmates who I've gotten to know over the years that have been affected by the program. Like I said, interviewing was an extremely foreign concept to me. So while I was preparing, I was so nervous. I didn't know how my first interview would go, but luckily I had a great experience with my first narrator, Mario, who put me at ease for that interview and my future interviews. I was shocked at how deeply personal the interviews turned out to be. They discussed much more than just college life, and that was really special for me. It kind of allowed me to learn about myself. I was able to recognize how much I took going to UF for granted and just learn about my peers' experiences that are so different from my own. I realized that MFOS is an entirely life-changing program and just how important equity is in higher education.
And that kind of concludes our portion on the timeline. And now I'm going to pass it on to the documentary team, and I believe Samantha will lead us for that.
Yeah, hi everybody. So while the timeline pamphlet team was working really hard on their amazing historical narrative and putting all of this information together, a few of us decided that we were going to take a video, like multimedia approach, and we did this because we really felt that it was going to be the best way to use a lot of these interviews and really be able to apply kind of what we heard and put it together, because there were so many places where these stories intersected and so many places where you could tell a larger story just with what we had done as narrators and as well as what was already around the interviews that had already been around. So we started thinking, and we talked to Dr. Pendleton a lot, and she gave us a task that was 15 minutes for 15 years. We almost did that. We went a little on the long side, but nevertheless, we made the short documentary to really chronicle MFOS's history a little bit, but more so to tell these stories and pass them along. So we ended up separating it. We have some background as well as exploring some of the themes, like the identities of these scholars and mentorship and alumni, and kind of letting people get to know the current scholars and show where this program is headed. So we're not going to show the movie over Zoom because that's going to deteriorate the quality a lot, and we wanted you to see it in the best form possible. So we have the link on the slide. It's also in a QR code, and Caitlin also just posted it in the chat. It's 22 minutes long, so we'll give you about 25 minutes to get that going. And from there, we're all going to watch it separately. Let us know if you have questions about how to view anything, just let us know. But we'll reconvene in about 25 minutes, having all watched the documentary. So yeah, thanks.
You know, I also would encourage first generation students to really reflect on and think about what their first generation identity means. I think it's very can be very comforting and confidence building, and you know, we talk about our first generation students here at UF as trailblazers, as role models, as you know, students who are very worth celebrating, and validating their stories and where they came from really matters, I think, in their success. So new students, you know, here at UF, we want them to claim and capture and own and be proud of what it means to be first generation.
You know, to be able to impact the lives of not only the students, but to be impactful in the lives of the community, their siblings, whole neighborhoods who may have never had a student who went to college or university, let alone graduate.
And I can go on, but I think a lot of those stories really are based in students' lived experiences and how they've been able to navigate UF with their own strength and by finding community and really looking at being first generation as a point of pride and empowerment rather than something to be ashamed of.
The University of Florida was founded as a land-grant institution in 1853 with the purpose of providing accessible higher education for the entire state. The Common College narrative at the time supported only white men. It took UF until 1971, with the founding of the Institute of Black Culture, to establish institutionally recognized policies that celebrated diversity. Bernie Machen highlights the importance of diversity in Florida.
One of the most heterogeneous in-migration populations in the country. So every year the state was becoming more diverse.
Sustaining the trend of inclusion, in 1990, the American Hispanic Alumni Association was founded as a place for yet another underrepresented minority. 4 years later, La Casita was created as a home for the school's Hispanic community. Erica Aguiar highlights the importance of second families for first-generation college students.
Above the money, above the resources we provide, I mean, they're very thankful for all of those things, but it's the people and the interactions that they can make with fellow students and alumni of the program that has changed their experience, because on a campus of 50,000, they can see that bright orange MFOS shirt and there's an immediate, you get me.
Erica also speaks to how MFOS and existing places of support work together to serve first-generation college students.
We can't do it all. We absolutely can't. And so we've always been really interested in how others are supporting first gen, and we don't believe we own it. So, the Association of Hispanic Alumni, for example, they've been supporting MFOS for years, I think, because many of them are first gen graduates. We've always relied on others to sort of do this. And we really try to cross-collaborate as much as we can. One of our biggest supporters and sort of co-planners is the Office of Academic Support, which includes the Promise Program, TRIO programs, McNair, because we know that our students exist in those areas. And if they've got resources that we don't, we want to make sure that we're, helping our students. We're all here for student success, right?
In 2004, Bernie Machen came to UF from the University of Utah. There, he tested a program for first-generation students, and as UF's 11th president, he chose to expand this idea. Machen's move was significant because 1 year prior, after the Grutter v. Bollinger Supreme Court case that upheld affirmative action, then-President George W. Bush displayed great disapproval, compounding fears and instability for first-generation and minority students of the time. In 2005, Dr. Machen asked the Vice President of Student Affairs to find a way to make first-generation college student experiences better. The following year, the Florida Opportunity Scholars program was founded with the intentions of providing financial support to low-income first-generation college students that had been accepted to the University of Florida on their own merit. This program was one of the first of its kind. In 2009, while the FOS program was expanding, Leslie Pendleton was hired to become the director of the Florida Opportunity Scholars program.
I was looking to work ideally at a larger land grant institution and landed here at the University of Florida working in new student and family programs, and so helped run our orientation and first year experience programs from 2006 to 2009. I vividly remember we were sitting around the conference room table in Peabody Hall because I was a member of the Dean of Students staff, and Jean Jarsky, our Dean of Students at the time, said, "So we have this new scholarship program that President Machen wants to launch, and Dr. Tejas Irvin is very supportive of it, but we need a team of people. Has anybody ever worked with first-generation college students before?" Or raised my hand and said, "Oh yeah, actually, I'm pretty familiar with first-gen students from my coursework." Anyways, a group of about 7 of us came together and met pretty regularly to build out the support elements for this program. And so I was part of the program from the beginning, but then in 2009 became the director.
1 year later, the first class of Florida Opportunity Scholars graduated, marking the beginning of a long story of success for the program.
One of the coolest things, I'm glad we're doing this project now, is that Richard and I both started in 2017. So this spring will be our first class that we've fully graduated, that we welcomed them in the summer and fall of 2017, and that they'll now graduate in 2021. And I think that's the best thing that I could even think about as we're working on this project is to talk about how college changes people. Well, we've seen that, and we've seen all of those little steps in the process.
2012 marked an important year for the program when they received a donation of $10 million from an anonymous donor. Since the donation was made in honor of Bernie Machen, FOS decided to change its name to the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars program, which it remains today.
Can tell me a little bit about what it means to be a first-generation college student?
It means I put my family on my back, and I said, there's no barriers that I'm gonna let get in my way to do what I want to do.
Also means opportunity to me. It means that this is my chance to really, put us out there.
Yeah, I think that sometimes being first generation gives me that little oomph, that little thing that kind of sets me apart.
So imposter syndrome is this feeling of being an imposter. We see it a lot with marginalized groups, first-gen students, and I always describe it as this mistake.
There's a sense that I've had for a while of being one of the only people in the room. I think imposter syndrome changes based on your situation, but the good thing is that I did believe I had a strong academic background, and I wasn't afraid to be around people that I thought didn't have the same backgrounds as I did.
I think there's different aspects of your life that you feel like an imposter from, when I went to UF and I felt like, oh my gosh, because a lot of people, there was this one comment in high school that a person told me when they didn't get in, they were like, oh, you got in because you're Hispanic. And I was like, I'm second in my class and I play sports and I do all these things. I think I deserve this, but that very much stuck with me because, it was the whole thing, did I get in on my own merit or did I not?
Although students in MFOS come from all sorts of backgrounds, they're not all ethnically diverse, right? But there were a lot of people who were ethnically diverse that were MFOS students.
I'm a first generation here, right? I'm a first generation Black girl at UF. And it's it's uncommon.
There's not one way to perform being Latinx or being Black or being anything, right? You can exist in multiple areas. So just because I didn't speak Spanish and because I'm light-skinned doesn't negate my identity.
And so being first generation, it's hard finding the balance between being my background, which is Mexican, being Mexican descent, but also being American because I'm both.
Every layer that you bring as a student parent or, as a student who's lost a family member or as a student of color who's, working through their queer identity, those are things we have to continue to talk about and we are incredibly cognizant of and we lead with because I don't know how I can support you if I'm only looking at one part of you because we're multifaceted people.
It's just always, I think, great to meet someone that reminds you to not put yourself in a box, that there are a lot of options that you can pursue and just to help you explore what that is.
That's what the MFOS provided. They really took a hold of the first year Florida program and had an MFOS component of that. They had workshops that taught us about finances. I mean, we had never been on our own before. If you were me, you were used to being broke. So when you had a lump sum of money, you were like, how am I gonna manage this to make this last? And so that financial literacy was really important.
So my first mentor position was through MFOS. I was a mentor for first generation students. The biggest thing with mentorship and giving back is to make them feel like they have a friend. I don't expect them to confide in me since day one, but it was kind of crazy to see the build up from the beginning of the semester to the end, where some of them confided into me like, hey, I have to drop a class, I haven't told anyone, can you be, of assistance for me and stuff like that? Or, I'm having this issue back home with my parents and I don't know where to stay for winter break, I have to stay in the dorm and stuff like that. So I put them in contact with some RAs that I knew that were staying over the break so that they wouldn't feel so alone and stuff like that. So, little things like that it's like, if I wasn't there, then who would have been?
I didn't have to feel like I had to put on this mask. We see that so much with our students. I could talk really freely and openly about the struggles my family was facing with money or, identity issues I was having because they understood. And it, there wasn't this weird, oh, why can't you just go out and buy that new thing? Or why can't you do this? They just sort of got it. So the MFOS program is literally what kept me in college, what helped me graduate. I attribute all my success to it. But that first year, those first couple years were really hard. And I'm thankful to Leslie and the mentors and faculty and staff that I had in my life to help me keep going. Alums are so successful. We have 2 alums who just graduated from Yale Law School. We have them at UF Medicine. We've had one who was in the Peace Corps for 2 years, one who works for ESPN. I mean, they are out there changing the world. And that's the network that we've been able to form for our alumni and for our current students. That I think without this program, one of the typical things about being first gen is that it's an invisible identity. So you can't always look at someone and be like, all right, you're first gen. So because of the MFOS moniker or, you wearing that shirt, you sort of know who exists where.
I had the unique opportunity after I graduated from law school to be a part of the Leadership Council, which really gave me an in-depth look at what was going on with the program. I couldn't believe that they were like adding more and more students. They have the ability, it's just grown. There's such a need for this help with students. And as good as the program was, there was more people who needed help. And I think that they have really, over the years, risen to the need, to meet the need. But I also hope that they continue the support for the students, because at the end of the day, money comes and goes, but the support that you give people is what's gonna really last and what they're gonna learn from in order for them to one day be support, right? It'll put them in the best position to hopefully become donors to the program themselves. I donate to the program, I'm a donor. And I think that I wouldn't be able to without those foundational things and the support. So I think that there's no limit to that support.
Well, I remember that day because I was so proud of myself. I graduated with all of these honors and Tim Tebow was right in front of me. Yes. And I just remember him walking out and there was a standing ovation. And I just remember it. I was happy. I was clapping because I was excited for him as well. And then I remember when I walked across the stage, I remember the president at the time gave me this look like, who are you? You have all of these rewards on and I don't know your name. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not Tim Tebow, but I am Lakeisha Witter here.
It was maybe the most exciting day of my life. I had the opportunity with MFOS to speak at a few events in my time, just about some hurdles I overcame and how the scholarship program came alongside me. And because of those opportunities, I got to know Bernie Machen really well. And it was just a really unique opportunity. So I remember just gearing up for graduation and you put the cap and gown on and it's just something I had dreamed of my entire life. And just being a part of the crowd and then walking across the stage and getting a huge hug from Bernie Machen saying, great job, you've done it. I did it, I reached my goal and it was a really beautiful moment.
The beauty of the program here is that it does remove the financial, needs to be a student. So we fully fund everything: tuition, room, board, books. Theoretically, this program should remove the financial barriers for students to be full participants in the university environment.
MFOS has really done a lot for me, honestly. It allowed me to come here, and it was the first thing that it was the first organization, MFOS Ambassadors, that I was a part of that made me feel like, that I was doing something other than school.
Like, I realized that if I really want to start a new journey, if I want to be who I like, the goals I want to do, I kind of need to get out of that comfort zone.
Machen Florida Opportunity Scholarship has provided me, I'd like to say, invaluable resources. I've been able to get involved in research since my first semester. I've been involved in research, another type of research, which my first research opportunity that MFOS kind of trailblazed allowed me to get the research opportunity that I have now.
I can give back through my service, and I think that that's something that I've really been excited for, and it's kind of showed me that following your passions is more accessible than one may think. I think giving the opportunity to people like me to be able to feel like, wow, my story is worth sharing. Like, this story, is made possible by the opportunities I've been given, I think is really powerful.
I think if I hadn't met Erica and I haven't met Richard, then I really wouldn't have even thought about doing higher education, because they were the first people who I truly admired here at UF. I was like, they're taking the time to talk to me, and they really do care about me.
I kind of got lucky of being chosen to be part of MFOS, and it really has helped a lot. And not only has it helped that the financial side of it, but it's kind of helped me personally, because I realized you're kind of in it all together.
Going here was a huge leap for me, and I think the MFOS program is proof that there are resources out there, and we're seeing a huge shift. This was not possible for my grandparents and my great grandparents, and now I'm setting a precedent for my family, and I'm setting a precedent for families back in my community to say, hey, this is super doable.
I literally want to scream this from the top of my the rooftops of everywhere. If you are thinking about school and you think you cannot go to school because of financial reasons, think again.
When we had our very first kind of event at the University House, now it was called the President's House then. In fact, Bernie lived there at that time. We had that first event there, and we were really, intentional and saying you all are scholars, you're brilliant, you're smart, we're a better place because you're here, and really talked about them as a really value add to the university. And I think that, again, set the stage for, I think, others at the university to understand that first-gen students, it's not just this deficit-based perspective.
I don't know what the future holds for me, if I'm being honest. I think the future me will handle that. I'll have to give the biggest thank you to MFOS. And I know that Richard and Erica and Leslie, they're all going to be so happy for me. And I know for a fact I'm going to get back to MFOS, because I would want to change someone's life just like MFOS has changed mine.
I will let James pass. I will send and give it back to James so we could continue. And bear with us. We're almost there in conclusion, but go for it, James.
Okay, so now I think the video team is just going to talk a little bit about their experience and viewpoints following doing this project. I think Ash might be talking first.
So hello all, my name is Ashlyn Lane, and I was in charge of the background. Since you all just watched the video, I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned through my experience with this project. One of the first topics that really caught my attention was how invisible first generation identities are, which I believe Caitlin will be talking more about. But from the time I was a kid, there was never this question as to if I was going to college, only when. And like some of the other presenters here today have hinted at, this project really identified yet another way that I am privileged and really encouraged me to work even harder to capture the stories that I never would have encountered. Another topic I was confronted with was affirmative action. I never really knew what it meant until I started doing research to piece the background together, and I kept thinking, wow, why is this something people feel so strongly about? And why are members of our communities not getting the boost that would bring them closer to equity in higher education? Though it was a bit depressing to see so many barriers in such large institutions, listening to the interviews with Bernie Machen, Erica Aguiar, Leslie Pendleton, and even my own interviews with Ethan Lawrence and Adita Reha really stuck with me. Every single one of them looked at this problem and without hesitation worked incredibly hard to create an inclusive space for the first gen experience. Their drive gave me so much hope for more programs and policies focused on inclusion and equity at large universities. My overall experience with this project wildly exceeded my expectations. As far as what I thought I could accomplish, as well as my perception of higher education and oral history, which I believe have both been very drastically altered for the better. But most of all, I wish I had another semester working on this project just to continue to bring understanding and awareness to this amazing program.
Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin. Over the course of the semester, while conducting the interviews and watching them myself, so much of the content presented by the narrators was focused on their identity, be that of a first-generation student, their racial identity, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religious affiliation. All of these aspects of the narrators came together within the histories they shared during the interviews. In making the documentary, we really wanted to highlight this important aspect of the student experience. I found myself coming across 3 categories within identity, which we saw presented in the documentary as the first-gen student identity, the role of imposter syndrome, and the connections and intersectionality of other ways one identifies themselves. The first-generation student identity is arguably the most important, as it is what has allowed all of these incredible people to come together. Erica really emphasized this in her interview with a quote that was in the documentary in Ash's section, but I would like to draw our attention to it once more. It's on the slide as well. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's the people and the interactions that has changed their experience. There's an immediate you get me and an immediate familial piece. This was something that I found present in all of the interviews that I watched while looking for clips for the documentary. The sense of community that MFOS creates within these individuals is inspiring. It's the community that is created with these students which allows them to tackle issues like imposter syndrome, which, as Dr. Stephanie Roland Rodriguez highlighted in our interview together, continues through every aspect of life and through every step of the process. Being able to recognize that there are people experiencing similar feelings is enough to know that you should keep moving forward. As a first-generation student myself, hearing some of these experiences narrators like Brandon White and Stephanie shared really moved me. Ultimately, the influence of other aspects of identity was something I felt it was crucial to highlight, because the MFOS community are more than just first-generation students. They are racially, ethnically, and religiously diverse individuals of different genders and sexual orientations. They are multidimensional and they bring so much to this campus and the UF community that it would be wrong for us to only look at them from the first-gen perspective. On that note, I will be passing it on to Arturo to share a bit about mentorship.
Based on the narrators that I spoke to myself and whose interviews I listened to, it's been clear to me that mentorship, this idea of someone, be it an older peer or perhaps someone who's more established, taking you under their wing to share with you this knowledge that you can't find in a textbook, this out of the classroom knowledge it's absolutely critical to the success of MFOS. And it was really amazing to hear how everyone, and I'm going to highlight Adrian Cruz, who is a current scholar and who I interviewed, and who, if you'd like to see the full interview, there's another QR code for you there. When he first got to the University of Florida, he had the drive, he had the passion, and that led to him being involved in 10 different organizations during his first semester, but he had no direction, as he put it. He didn't really know the ins and outs of how to apply himself in a potent way. And so it was because of the mentors that he found, first at MFOS, that was his foundation. And then from there, in other organizations, he found out the things that you don't learn in a classroom, like what kind of professors to take, what kind of schedule you should have, how many classes are too much or too little. And more importantly than that, he was connected to people who were in positions that he wanted to be in. So he was an engineer, and so he was connected with other engineers who then were able to share with him how it is that they got to the position that they were in. And what we find is that in the MFOS program, younger students, once they learn these ins and outs, once they learn this knowledge, then they turn around and they share what they learned with the new class, the new crop of scholars. And in this way, MFOS really fosters a lot of community support. It's a real network of solidarity among people who otherwise would not have access to that knowledge. Because in the olden days, all of this kind of knowledge, okay, you need to go and take these internships, and oh, you want to go and talk to someone who has a PhD? Well, you know, here I have my friend Jim, he has a PhD, et cetera, et cetera. All of that happened in an informal boys network type of way. It was not equitable because it really was about who you know, not what you know. And at MFOS, what I've seen that they do is that they break down that old boys network. They really connect the first generation students with people who can help them, who can give them this type of out of the classroom knowledge, this type of informal knowledge and informal connections without being blood related or without being of the same upper class background. And it really does do a lot to tear down and help people overcome these invisible barriers to equity in not just higher education, but then later on actual careers. So I was very, very impressed to see this, and the impact has been absolutely undeniable because everyone that I spoke to, every single narrator that I interviewed, they were clear that MFOS and the help that they got was absolutely critical to their success later in life. And I've focused mostly on the professional aspect of that, but there was also a very strong amount of compassion and empathy in the program that was absolutely striking. And it was really, it elicits a deep emotional response because we hear a lot and we almost expect that large institutions like the University of Florida, just going around and speaking to my peers, they feel like there's a lack of compassion. They really feel that the university is not there for them. But the MFOS program, it really is a shining light in that regard. Time and time again, I heard, for example, from Adrian Cruz, who said that when he was struggling, when actually he was a mentor, someone came to him and was talking about family troubles at home, about how he couldn't go home for winter break. And that's not something that you can just tell anyone. There needs to be a level of trust and respect. And the Scholar program really has cultivated that. And it has allowed for people to have a shoulder to cry on when things get tough. It provides access to people who will pick you up when life knocks you down. And it really has had a very strong positive impact on the lives that it has touched.
Hi, my name's Courtney Walsh, and I had the absolute honor of interviewing these three incredible women that you see on the screen: Alyssa Wiles, Jennifer Burgess, and Dr. Lakeisha Witter. I initially applied to be a part of the internship because I believe that oral history is the future of history, and to do justice to, I guess, the common man, it would include you and I, is to interview them and get their stories, because history is not just what we read about in the textbooks, it's going around us constantly. But after conducting these interviews, I realized that this is much more than, these are people who are much more than common people. They are doing amazing, incredible things. For example, Dr. Lakeisha Witter, you see her speak in the documentary. She talks about that she was behind Tim Tebow at graduation. But I think it's important to note that Dr. Lakeisha Witter deserved her own celebration, her own right. When talking to her, she's an alumni of the program. I learned that not only is she a doctor and she has her doctorate, but she runs a farm. She actually came and spoke to me right after getting off of the farm and took the time out of her day to speak with me, which I thought was amazing. Alyssa Wiles and Jennifer Burgess are amazing as well. Alyssa is in the, yes, Dr. Pendleton, she runs a farm in Minnesota. Alyssa Wiles is currently in the program, and hearing her perspective as a student and realizing a lot of the things that she's encountered that I haven't encountered. I'm not a first generation student, and how she's taken things with such strength was really inspiring and inspired me to throughout my undergraduate journey. And I will keep her words with me forever. And same with Jennifer Burgess, who is in her postgraduate journey. And actually, right after she spoke with me, she had a job interview. These are people who are out here doing amazing, amazing things. And the MFOS program truly helped set them up for this success. And they said it themselves. And if you guys have time, I really, really encourage you to watch not only these interviews, but other interviews. And just the documentary would be like 1 trillion minutes long if I can make it and include all their amazing words. But the alumni and the current students of the MFOS program, it's an honor to have preserved their current stories in history for now. And hopefully in the future, we'll get to speak with them again and hear what else they've been up to, because they're truly amazing people. And I couldn't speak more highly of them and all the inspiration that their words and this internship has given me. So thank you so much.
Just to conclude, I called this section 15 and beyond the present and future because as we were doing our interviews and as I interviewed a current student, Angelica Gonzalez, I really reflected on the experience of just talking to students and talking to scholars about their time in the program, but also talking to them about what they were doing outside of the program. MFOS is a huge part of their involvement for a lot of them, but they are also just doing such incredible work in our campus community that it would be such a crime to overlook the value of each one of them in our presence. And so just this quote from Dr. Pendleton kind of brought it all together for me when she said, "You're all scholars, you're brilliant, you're smart. We're a better place because you're here." That was so powerful to me because these personal histories really are the history of MFOS. And each one of these students, we understand the value of this program. And so from there, I put this part of the documentary together just to highlight these students and highlight these scholars and just really show them as individuals as much as possible. It was a really short documentary, so it was hard to do, but I got in contact with a lot of them and just asked for any images they wanted to share, anything they felt very strongly about. And I loved being able to use that because it just seeing pieces of their lives is such a benefit to this project, because we will have that archived and know who these students were as they go on into their lives and into the future. So on the bottom left is Angelica Gonzalez, who I interviewed. On the bottom right is Chase Smith with some of her friends. And then on the top is Linda Dillon, excuse me, at the President's House with Dr. Machen and Dr. Fox. And they just talked about how important that experience was. The event at the President's House came up a lot, just like as a huge thing for them. But I loved seeing these pieces of their lives, and I felt honored that they shared that and that we could pass it along through this documentary. And if anything, just to re-emphasize that we are a better place because of this program as a campus community was so important to me. So yeah.
All right, so before we wrap up, we're getting towards the end of our event here today. We're going to hear some words from Dr. Pendleton. She's going to give us a nice conclusion in a moment, but first we figured we could take a couple questions and I could maybe direct a couple answers in that. So if you have any questions, you can send them in the chat, or if you know how to raise your hand, that would be great.
Please feel free to write the questions on the chat. If you have any questions, we'll take a couple questions before moving to the final phase.
Okay, we got an awesome program. Thank you.
We have another comment. Thank you for the opportunity to share our stories. Thank you so much for those comments. They really mean a lot to us. I think maybe we could continue to the next part, James. I think we're ready.
Yeah, all right. So Dr. Pendleton, you want to give us some concluding thoughts just about everything?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure how I can follow this terrific work that you all have done over the course of this semester. I have really enjoyed interacting with all of you and seeing kind of the learning and taking your questions throughout the semester. And I could really tell that all of you, whether you email me personally or would reach out, I'm just really thrilled. And please know that this is going to be a lasting project. I'm already getting texts and emails from Dr. Machen and others saying, we have to figure out how to continue to showcase this tremendous work that all of you did. So really on behalf of several colleagues who have joined us, I really appreciate you all joining us and listening into this fabulous work that our UF students have completed this semester. As I reflect on equity in higher education, I mean, no time is better than now to continue these conversations and dialogues. And, it particularly speaks to me to hear so many of you who personally don't identify as a first generation college student, for this to really be an eye-opening project for you. I'm first so grateful to have received an early advanced copy of the documentary as well as the brochure. I don't know that I would be able to be speaking as clearly and hopefully coherently with you all at this point, because the work that you all have done, it really is inspiring. I know we've got some alumni on the call who are here listening in, who participated in this project. And so Fong, Mohammed, Mario, I know Adita was on earlier. I saw her. Amelia, I think, was also on too, and probably a few others that I missed, as well as a lot of our current students. Tony, who mentioned something in the chat about the feeling appreciative to being able to share their stories. And storytelling is so important for, I think, all students as they reflect on, their experiences, their privileges, their gratitude. And so the opportunity for so many individuals to be a part of this project, really, a year in the making so far. And like we've all said, the project isn't over yet. The support of so many for this project. And, I definitely don't know that I deserve to have the final word. I think if Dr. Machen wants to say anything as we wrap up, I would invite him to. But Dr. Machen and Chris have really, continued to champion this program, obviously under their leadership at UF, but then even in retirement and continuing to really support this program. On so many levels. Our scholars, as was mentioned, that the new scholar reception and the graduation receptions are really salient opportunities for our scholars, and for he and Chris to continue to support the program as they do. It's so meaningful. And And he shares this story a lot, but I mean, to continue to have the support of Dr. Fox in a leadership change, you know, at some important times of this program over the last 15 years, and for Dr. Fox to really continue to embrace and support this program. And as you heard at the beginning, we're growing. I mean, the number of scholars in this program is going to continue to grow, and it's because of the impact of the program, and because we are a better place. UF is a better place because of this program. And you know, Dr. Stewart Fullwood, I see you're also on the call too. You've done some tremendous work over the years to really champion equity and continue to push UF in the right direction on this side of history. And so, you know, Dr. Ortiz, Aldolfo, Deborah, who's here. I mean, I feel like the music's gonna start playing here any minute for the Oscar speech I'm giving, but it's so true. So many of you have been instrumental in this program. And you know, I have to say, Dr. Patricia Tejas-Irvin, who is a special person to me as a mentor, she was our vice president for student affairs when this program started. And it's her legacy here as well at UF. So I know a lot of you know PTI, so I want to make sure we mention her. And then our colleague from the National Center for First Generation Student Success. I don't know if any of you caught that. She was on earlier, Dina, for the first probably 40 minutes of this conversation, and she got the video earlier as well. Connecting with a national organization who champions first-gen student success. I mean, they're one of my great colleagues, and I invited them here intentionally so they could see the good work that all of you have done. Again, it takes a village to continue to run and champion a program like this, and I'm committed to continuing on a national level to support first-gen students and really showcase what UF does in this space. And so to have her here, I think is also, again, a great testament to the work that all of you have done this semester. So, you know, this program clearly has brought a richness to my life and a richness to several people's lives. And so for you all to document it in this way and to really make it be something lasting here at the university in the archives and in the documentary that's forthcoming is so important. And so again, with what I hope is a place of leadership to, you know, from compassion and empathy, as Arturo articulated earlier, I mean, that's the work and the obligation and the duty of all of us that work here at UF. And so again, on behalf of our team, you know, Erica Aguiar, who was a big contributor, and then Richard Blake, also on my team, Destiny Caldwell, and the numerous graduate assistants who have supported these scholars over the years as well. We definitely owe a lot to a lot of people. So I'll stop there. The Oscars music is definitely playing. So I'll turn it back over to all of you. But Bernie, I know this was a special night for you too, you and Chris, who I know we're on the call as well. And just kudos, well done. We are in all of the work that you've done. Great job. Go Gators.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I just want to make sure to tell everyone to stay tuned for future events with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Like Dr. Ortiz mentioned, and Dr. Pendleton mentioned, this is an ongoing, effort, and the Oral History Program at UF takes big pride in, distributing information and connecting with the community. So expect many events in the future. And again, notably in November, they do have that documentary officially releasing. So that's all that I have, or that we have for you guys. Yeah.
Bernie, did you want to, Bernie, or I know Chris was on earlier too. I don't have the view to see her, but did the two of you want to offer some kind of concluding thoughts? Well, did any one of our students want to offer some thoughts? And I was just really impressed by the presentation. Obviously, I can announce in public, you all have earned an A. This is just fabulous work. And what I was really impressed about was how you kind of incorporated your own, kind of I statements and how the project impacted you personally. That's such an important part of your learning, our learning at the University of Florida and higher education, is not just learning about a fact or an event, but thinking about our relationship to that fact and our relationship to that event. And in this case, trying to figure out how to make higher education more equitable. I see my dear colleague, Dr. Betty J. Stewart Fullwood. No one at this university has done more to make this university more equitable than Betty. So and I've had the great honor to be able to work with her on a number of different initiatives. And I think if she says that a project is good, then it is good. But now I would kind of like us to think about where do we go from here? That's kind of my role as professor, is to think about, okay, we've done this great work. It is a work in progress, but now how are we going to continue to live out these values that we have learned? We no longer, and one of the things I heard a lot this evening was, we no longer take our privileges for granted if we're a second or third or fourth or fifth generation student. And I remember when I was in graduate school and my first seminar at Duke University, we went around the table and introduced ourselves, and the peer to the left of me said, well, my great grandfather was a professor at Princeton University before the Civil War. And I'm thinking, wow, my people were peasants in Mexico during that same time, and how different we are. But now you have kind of pierced through that veil of appearances, right? Society, what you've done is you've kind of gone under those appearances and realized the incredible diversity of our communities at the University of Florida. And so again, how are we going to continue to kind of spread and promote this learning? That's kind of, I guess, my charge to everyone, is to take what you've learned this semester and just continue to grow and continue to share it, and as broadly as possible. And we're going to do everything we can, certainly on the part of the Proctor program, to spread the word about the MFOS program, because as we've been interviewing people, whether it's students, alumni, or founders of the program, one of the commonalities is, we need this in my state now. We need this in my college. We need this in my university. And so that's one of the things we hope to be able to kind of spread over time. I also want to again thank the Proctor program. Those of you familiar with our internship know it's a team taught effort. I also want to thank our other fellow co-instructors. You saw Adolfo Romero, who just finished his MA in Latin American Studies. Marcus Chatfield was on the line earlier. Marianne, I think I saw her as well, Agiana. And a lot of people come in from the oral history program to teach different aspects to the students of oral history, from transcribing to audit editing to creating an interview guide. And so a number of different individuals, including Sandra Romero, Raja Rahim, and many others, came in to teach different aspects of oral history throughout the course of the semester. So we're really blessed to have a community of instructors. And with that, I'm really about at the end of my commentary. Even though I am a history professor and known to ramble quite a bit, please continue to stay in contact with Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars. Please continue to stay in contact with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. You see our URLs or links in the chat bar. As was mentioned earlier, we're going to continue to work on the documentary. We'll go into heavy production this summer. We're going to continue to do the oral histories. I also love that part of the timeline, students, where you made the timeline an open kind of living document. That's what history is. It is about change over time. It isn't about, things just aren't static. They don't just stay the way they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I'm just so proud of our students for their perseverance, their creativity, and the ways in which, and I want us, those of us my age and older, to just kind of consider how this group of students has done an amazing job of documenting history. Because sometimes us older folks complain, well, young people don't appreciate history. But it's the students really who have done that. And last week, our students and some of the students you saw tonight played an important role in the Proctor program in helping to document the Black Thursday, the protest movement. And again, I'm so proud of our students for keeping these important moments and events alive. Black Thursday, the founding of La Casita, the founding of IBC, the Hispanic Alumni Association. These are all the building blocks of what becomes the Opportunity Scholars program. And I think my dear colleague, Dr. Pendleton, would agree with me. It's all of these things together. It's almost like this incredible series of events. It seems almost accidental, except you realize a lot of people sacrificed to get us to this point. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you to the students. Thank you to the instructors, and especially thank you to the narrators, the people who took so much time out of your precious schedules. You know, you heard a lot about some of our more famous narrators. Our students were really happy to get those, but they were equally happy to be able to interview current students and alumni who are just doing incredible things. So again, Leslie, thank you so much for approaching us with the idea. I always love collaborating with MFOS. So you know where we're at, we know where you're at, and so we'll just continue the collaboration.
Thank you so much. You will all be invited when the premiere of the documentary happens as well. So we look forward to staying in touch with all of you too. And yes, Dr. Ortiz, thank you so much for jumping on and getting really excited about this program. Your energy and leadership has also really, contributed here and continues to contribute to the lives of so many. So thank you for teaching all of us through this process.